Welcome to your complete beginner's guide for the DJI Osmo 360. In this video, we're gonna go through everything that you need to know to get up and running fast with this tiny little 360 camera. So we're gonna go over how the camera works, we're gonna go through how the software works, we're gonna go through how you actually use this camera to get interesting shots when you're out filming. So if you're ready, let's get into it. So we have a lot to unpack with the DJI Osmo 360, but first let me just give you a quick rundown of everything that you're gonna learn in this video. So first we'll go through a camera overview, learn what everything does on the camera itself, then we'll dig into how you actually use the Osmo 360. We'll dig into the different modes that you have access to and just how you actually record when you're out filming. Then we'll play around with the different ways that you can capture audio using a wireless microphone. And then we'll jump into how do you actually get some interesting shots with the DJI Osmo 360. And then most important, at the end of this video, we'll jump into DJI Studio and really understand how you can use this camera and how you can move the footage around in your editing software to create some really interesting shots. And I just want to say a special thanks to DJI for sponsoring this video. And so let's just jump right into the first section, which is all about understanding the camera. So overall, this camera is actually very simple. When you get the camera, you're gonna have this lens guard, and this is gonna be a super important thing that you always keep with you whenever you're using the DJI Osmo 360, because the biggest thing with any 360 camera is keeping both lenses completely clean. How a 360 camera works is that there's two sensors. There's one on either side of the camera. There's two lenses. There's one on either side of the camera. And together, each create a 180-degree field view. So you could see an entire view one direction, and you flip to the camera to the other side, you can see the other view the other direction. Now, the software inside the camera automatically switches the two halves together so that you have this seamless 360 view. And in this camera, you have up to 8K resolution. So what that means is that full 360 view. So every direction that you're filming is the full 8K image. Now you can downres to 6K or 4K, but personally, whenever I'm out shooting with this camera, I'm trying to squeeze the most resolution possible out of my camera, because what you do later is you go through and reframe and edit your shots. So you're basically taking that full sphere, that 360-degree view, and you're cropping into one section to get a shot like this. So right now, I'm just shooting with my normal camera that I use, and you get this 16:9 image. You basically go in, grab this shot out of that full 360 view. And so you could change how wide you want that lens to look, you could change how narrow, and you could change the direction of it. But you're limited on the resolution because you only have 8K of resolution for the full 360. So that's why you want to be using the highest resolution possible when you're working with this camera. And as I said, the lenses are super important because as you can see, they stick out on either side. That's a bulb. And so if you scratch these lenses or you get a mark or you crack them, you're gonna not be able to get good footage anymore. Like, you're gonna see things on your shot that are gonna be floating around. And if you go crack your lens, you have to go and get this whole thing replaced. You have to get the whole lens replaced. These lenses on the DJI Osmo 360 aren't user replaceable, so you would have to send it in to get it fixed. So keeping your lenses clean of dust, clean of scratches, and just always protected is going to be one of the most important things that you think about when you're actually transporting this camera and using it. Now, the big thing with an action camera like this is that it is a action camera. You're supposed to be using this like other action cameras that you have. So like the DJI Action or the Osmo Nano, you could use this to get your A-roll. So if you're doing something like vlogging or doing a walk and talk, you can film yourself. You can film you talking with other people. But also in any sort of action situation, whether it's mounting on a car, you're snowboarding, you're going four-wheeling, whatever it is, you mount this camera in a way so that you can get this kind of floating camera effect. The cool thing is with the stitching, with both sides of this lens, it hides whatever is attached to it, as long as it's skinny enough. So if it's as skinny as the camera, like an action pole, then basically it's going to hide that pole and it's going to be a floating camera moving around. That's how you get these really cool, interesting shots of like a floating camera above yourself or next to you, or, next to the bike whenever you're out riding your bike and you're filming it with the 360. Now on the camera itself, you have only a handful of buttons. Like, this is a very easy camera to use because a lot of the magic comes when you actually go through and edit. The cool thing about 360 footage is that you're just filming everything. So you don't really have to worry about where you're pointing the camera. The only thing that you're really going to be thinking about is positioning of the camera, how high it is, how low it is, which direction the camera is, how far away it is. That's what you're thinking about, but you're not thinking about this 16:9 shot or the 9:16 or the square, whatever the framing is, because you can go through later and re-edit all of your frames to fit whatever platform that you're uploading to. So if you're doing a vertical video, you can chop this out of the 360 image, or if you're doing it here like on YouTube, you could chop out the 16:9 image. You have complete flexibility and complete control to be able to pull whatever you need out of this footage. Now, a big thing that we're talking about in this video is all about taking this 360, this 8K footage of the whole sphere, and cutting in an image to use for other videos. Or if you just want to use this as your main camera, you can do that. But I'm doing it in the sense that you're going to be chopping this and using your 360 software to pull out a shot to use for your video. Versus this can also be used if you are shooting VR content. Now, I'm not going to dig into using this camera for VR content in this specific video. However, this can be used to put on the virtual reality goggles, look around, and see a full 360 image. And if that is something you want me to dive more into on how to use 360 footage for VR content where you can look in a 360 sphere, then let me know in the comments. And that might be a video I'll do in addition to this one later. But let's talk about what you find on the camera itself, because like I said, there's not much to it. It's a very simple camera. On the side, you have your power button, and this is also your quick shot button. So to turn on this camera, you just press and hold the power button. It's going to power on the camera, and you're going to start seeing your image on the screen. Now, if you just press on this quick shot menu once, you could switch between the different modes that you have set up in your quick shot menu. And you could go through and adjust this later. I will show you how to actually set up your quick shots to be specific settings that you use all the time, so you can just click between them really quickly. Right now, mine's set up to photo and video. So I click it over to photo. Now I could take a quick photo. There's two buttons on the bottom, a circle and a square. You just press on the circle, takes a photo, hit the quick shot menu again. It switches over to video, hit the circle again, and now you're seeing a 360 video here. And I'm just hand holding this camera. So you could probably see my arm and stuff when you look down. It's not gonna hide that because I'm using it kind of in this way that's more like an action camera. Press the circle again to stop recording. So you have two buttons here next to your screen. You have a circle and a square. Now the square just switches from far to near. So it kind of resets the camera and switches it both directions. And this is in the video mode, and the circle starts and stops recording. When I switch over to photo, it does the same thing where it switches back and forth between me and you hit the circle to take your photo. And for buttons, that's all you have. So we'll go into the deeper menus. I'll show you how to customize some different things, but on the screen itself, one of the really cool things when you're out filming, you can move your finger around and actually be able to look around the whole 360 environment. And then you click the square once, it's going to recenter to that front lens. Click the square again, it's going to recenter to the back lens where the screen is. And then the rest of the screen is actually a touch screen. So you're going to swipe. You're going to swipe down, you're going to swipe right, you're going to tap different things on the screen itself, and you'll pull up all your different menus and be able to control this camera. Now also you have two doors. On the left-hand side is going to be where you have your battery and your micro SD card. And then on the other side, you have another door which has your USB-C, which is used for charging, and it's also used for transferring your footage off if you plug it into your computer. But the last thing I want to show you is the bottom of this camera. So on the bottom, you actually have two ways to mount this camera. There is one that's a 1/4-20, so this you could screw in a pull, or you could screw this in to say a mount, like I put this on my car. I'll put it into a suction mount to be able to get some cool car shots. But also, there is DJI's magnetic clip mounting system. So just like all of DJI's action cameras, you have this system where it's got two clips and a magnetic mount. And this will clip on, will magnetize to your camera, And the clips will make sure it's secure so that once you have it in, the camera's not going anywhere. But the cool thing is you can attach your selfie pole to get the camera out and away, or you can attach these magnetic clip mounts to different spots around the places that you're commonly going to use this camera. So like I have one of these magnetic mounts right on my dash of my Jeep so that when I want to go off-roading, I can just stick the camera on the dash. And then if I want to pull the camera off, I just unclip it, take it away, put it somewhere else, maybe stick it on the pole, walk away from my Jeep, do something else. So the two different ways to mount make it super easy when you're out filming to be able to move this camera in different ways. Because one of the things that you're going to want to be doing when you have a 360 camera is putting it in different positions. We have this really cool ability to reframe your shots, but the way that you're actually going to want to use this camera to get interesting footage is by mounting the camera in different places and making a variety of shots so that when you get in your editing software, you don't have the same shot again and again and again. You want to get a variety. And I'll show you how you can do that just even by doing some hiking up here. I'll show you some different ways to kind of position the camera, where to think about placing it so that you can get back into your editing software and have a variety of shots whenever you're out filming. All right, so now let's jump into the next section, which is going to be about everything you're going to find on the screen. So all the features that we have access to and all the different little things that you might want to change when you're out filming. All right, let's jump into it. In this section, we're going to go through all of the different modes that you have access to with your DJI Osmo 360. And I'm also going to go into a lot of the deeper menus so we can have an understanding of how to actually use this camera. And so you can see I have another camera here and we have a full view of the screen so we can walk through step by step. So to use this camera, it's pretty simple. When you hold the power button, it's going to turn on and it's going to go back to whatever setting that you originally had. Now you can click the button on the side, the power button, just once, and it will go between your quick shot menu. And you can go photo or video. These are the two that I have set up right now. And there's some options with your quick shot. With this 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner, you can do a voice prompt where you can speak and it can change your modes. And this is where you could set up which modes that you want to have on this quick shot. Right now, I'm only using photo and panoramic video, but you could set this up to be whatever modes that you commonly use. Now, the other way to access the modes is the lower left-hand corner. You tap this, and it's going to show all of your modes. So we have single lens modes, and then we have 360 modes. So in 360, if we scroll all the way to the left, we have panoramic photo, we have panoramic video, we have super night, we have selfie mode, we have vortex, we have time lapse, and then you go over to the single lens mode and you have photo, boost video, super night, and video. So let's just go through and let me explain what each one of these are. So if we go over to 360, we go all the way back to the beginning and we just go panoramic photo. This is just taking a photo. So you can set a timer to this. Takes a few seconds and then it takes a photo. So here's a couple samples. You just stick it out on the extension pole, put a timer on it, click the record button or the photo shutter button, it counts down and then you get a photo. Now with any of these modes, you could swipe up from the bottom and you can change the different settings for that mode. So in panoramic photo, you have a 120 megapixel or 30 megapixel photo, and then you have your countdown. So you could turn this off or you could set this to 2, 3, 5 seconds. I usually use 3 and that's more than enough. Now also with any of the modes, you see this button on the right hand side, you click this and it's going to be your exposure settings. So right now mine's set on Pro, exposure is set to auto, white balance is set to auto. So you can turn off Pro mode and you don't have control of anything, but when you turn on Pro mode, these are the settings that you have control of. So now I can go in and change my exposure settings if I wanted to manually do those or change the different ranges that they have set up, or I can go in and set my white balance. These are the two options that we have for panoramic photo. So you might be wondering what some of this other stuff is on the screen, and we'll go through that in a little bit, but let's go through each one of these modes, show you the different capabilities you have with each. So we'll tap the lower left-hand corner, go over to panoramic video, and this is the video mode that we've been talking about the most of the time throughout this video. This is where you shoot the full 360 and you can go through and reframe later in your editing software. So if we scroll up, you could see that you have 4K, 6K, 8K, and you got 24 up to 50 frames per second in 8K. And if we go down to 6K, you could go up to 60 frames per second, and 4K, you could go up to 100 frames per second. So I'm going to keep it at 8K 30 frames per second. Now, if you click this icon in the upper left-hand corner, you have these different modes that affect how the camera is going to be recording. So video mode, you just click record, it's going to start recording. Pre-record means that the camera is going to be constantly recording. And when you press record, it's going to start that recording however much time you set before you press record. So if I have this set to 30 seconds, the camera is going to be constantly just buffering. It's going to be recording. And when you hit record, it starts recording at that moment and 30 seconds earlier. So this is great if you're trying to capture action and you really need to be able to grab a specific moment, but you don't know when it's going to happen. You just turn on this mode and then hit record. You know that you got it if it happened within the last few seconds. Now there's also loop recording. So this is where it's just continuously recording. And when it gets to the end of the card or the end of the data that's in the Osmo 360, it's going to start recording over that beginning footage. So it basically just creates this loop. So it's just constantly recording. And you could use this if you just always want this camera recording because you're waiting for something specific to happen and it might be hours away from happening. And you just want to have a continuous loop recording. You could think of it like security cam footage. Like security cam footage typically just records in a loop until something happens and then you have, say, the previous day of footage that you can refer back to. That's kind of how this mode works as well. And you could set this from max 5 minutes, 20 minutes, or 1 hour. So let's go back. I'm just going to set this to video. That's what I need. And then in the top right-hand corner, you have your different views. So you have standard, wide, and ultra wide. And this is just the view on the screen. Now, when you actually go in your editing software, this doesn't really matter because when you're editing, you can change all this in DJI Studio. So when you scroll down, it goes back to this main screen. And you can see as I move my finger around on the screen, you can actually look around the full 360. And at any point, if you want to snap back to the front or back camera, click the square, it will go from one side to the other. And you could also use this button in the lower right-hand corner to be able to do the same thing. Now, if you want to change your exposure settings or any of your color settings, touch these two lines with the dots, and you can go to your auto settings. You could turn on a few options here. So you have anti-motion blur. So this is in lower light situations. It tries to reduce the amount of blur that comes from moving the camera around. And then you have endurance mode. So what the camera is going to do with endurance mode is try to preserve the most amount of battery life when it's recording. And so this needs to be done at 30 frames per second or lower. And you also have your image adjustment. So this basically, if your image is too bright, you can go in here and say, I want the image to just be a little bit darker than what the camera thinks looks best. Now, if you click on Pro Mode, this is where you have all of your settings. So you have exposure settings, you can change your values and you can go full manual. You have your white balance, you can go manual and you can set it. You have anti-motion blur, that's the same as in the auto features. And then you have color. So you have this option for normal 10-bit or D-Log 10-bit. And D-Log is basically a flatter profile that allows you to do color grading in your editing software. It's going to allow you to preserve your highlights and your shadows. And it's just because it's a more professional tool to be able to match with other cameras. And it allows you to capture more dynamic range so that you can go through and edit the footage later. So we'll talk about D-Log when we get into editing this footage in DJI Studio. And I'll show you how you can edit the color super fast. And this is a feature that I just always have turned on because I know I'm going to go through and color grade all my footage. And then you have this option for color recovery. You turn this on. It's going to show you what a standard look looks like while you're filming, but you're still filming in D-Log M. Now you have the endurance mode and you also have image adjustment here. And the image adjustment works when you have the exposure set to auto up here in the upper left-hand corner. So let's go to the next mode. So we're going to flip over to Super Night. Super Night basically just gives you a better looking image when you're in darker situations. So if you're filming closer to sunset, you're filming at night, you're filming in a dark office like this, well, then you might put on that Super Night and it's going to just enhance the image. So it's going to look better in lower light situations. Now, the next mode is selfie mode. So if you ever want to film yourself, well, you could put it in selfie mode. And it's kind of like a single lens mode where it's only filming one direction and you can't reframe later. However, it's filming wherever the extension pole is. So let's put this camera out and away. And you can see now I have a shot of myself and I'm filming this with the selfie mode. It gives you the square cut out and you can shoot up to 4K and you get a shot of yourself. So if this is the only thing you're going after and you're not wanting to reframe later, you don't want to deal with that, but you want to get maybe a walk and talk, or you just want a shot of you snowboarding, doing something cool where you're whipping around, I don't know. This is the same thing as if you were to use the 360 mode, but then track yourself and you just get a shot of yourself. However, you are limited. So something to consider when you are working with the selfie mode is it's fixed. So if you don't have it framed properly, maybe you're out of the shot, it's going to be like any other action camera. You can't reframe later. You miss the shot, you miss the shot. So it's one of those where you want to know what your framing is. You want to see what the shot is. And if that's all you need, then this mode makes it easier so you don't have to go through and do your reframing and your editing software. You could just use the shot straight out of camera and you have a selfie shot ready to go. Okay, the next mode is vortex mode. Now this one is super interesting because this is where you spiral around and you get that super slow motion. Let's go show you a demo of how this works. Okay, so let's talk about vortex mode. So this is where you spin the camera around you in a 360 and it's shooting in super slow motion. So it's going to shoot in 240 frames per second. And you could change this to either 4K or 6K. And when you do 6K, it does 100 or 120 frames per second. So depending on how slow you want the footage to be, you have to change it between 6K and 4K. We're going to do 4K, 240 frames per second. And so what this is it's going to slow down the footage. And when you spin it around yourself, you create a really cool shot where, like, I don't know, I'm sure you've seen these shots before. You're standing, there's a lot of stuff going on. Maybe there's like fireworks and, you know, somebody's popping a bottle of champagne and the camera's spinning around. It creates that kind of Matrix style effect. Now, I don't have anything crazy going on up here, but we're at a cool location. So let's see what this looks like. So I'm going to roll the camera and I'm just going to whip this around. Whoa! So be careful when you do this because you don't want to hit something. You don't want to shatter the lenses and you don't want to hit someone else. And when you do this, you want to play around with height perspective. So you want either down low, spinning around you, or you want it up high, looking down. And when we get into talking about how to actually position this camera, you'll see all the different ways that you can hold this, and it's all going to impact what the footage is going to look like. Okay, the next mode after vortex is time-lapse. And I'm going to do a breakdown outside. I'll show you how to use this time-lapse mode. And so let me show you how this all works. All right, let's talk about time-lapse mode or hyperlapse mode. So you can speed up time using this camera. It's in a lot of DJI's cameras. You have these same modes, but the cool thing about using the 360 is that you're filming in the sphere. So when you're doing something like a time-lapse, you're going to get the clouds moving. I have it set up over here, just have it on the extension pole, and I shoved it down into a hole so that it's just going to stay there. And what it's going to do is it's going to capture everything. So as all these cool clouds are moving, I'm going to have the ability to go through and reframe my shot in the editing software. So I could start in one direction and swing it to the other direction, or I could start over here and go up to the clouds and then back down. So you just have creative flexibility with using the time-lapse feature. And what's cool is you have some different options built into it. So right now, I have a cloud time-lapse setting turned on. It's going to take a 10-minute time-lapse, and it's going to give me 10 seconds of footage, and you're going to see these clouds moving all through that shot. Now, when it comes to the hyperlapse feature, that's where you're going to be moving with the camera. So I turned it on, the hyperlapse feature, and I just walked down this trail up to the other peak, and you could see this all happen really fast in a speedy motion, because it's filming the entire sequence and then compressing it, making a time lapse out of it, but it's a moving time lapse. And so you can play around with both of these features if you want to speed up time, use time lapses and hyperlapses in your footage. Now, when you are doing a time lapse or a hyperlapse, you have a few different modes. So in the time lapse feature, you could do clouds, you could do sunset, or you could do manual. So you could set how often you want the camera to take a photo, and then you could make your time lapse that way. Now with the hyperlapse, you could choose the speed, 2x, 5x, 10x, 15x, 30x, or you could just let the camera decide by using the auto feature. All right, now let's head over to single lens mode. So let me just show you how these work. So when you're in single lens mode, basically you're either choosing the front lens or the back lens, and you could have a few video and photo options to be able to use this. So I just switched over to photo mode. And when you do this, you're basically taking a photo one side or the other. And it's just like an action camera. So you just imagine you're only using one of the two halves to take your photo. And so this is going to come in a 4x3, and you can change all your settings. You can go 30 megapixel down to 12 megapixel, and you can do a timer as well. And this is just an ultra wide framing. And when you scroll down to the different megapixels, say 12 megapixels, it's going to give you a standard framing. And so the width basically changes when you change the megapixels. Now with this, you could adjust your settings the same way, but also if you want to use the other camera, you just click the button in the lower right-hand corner, and it's going to switch from the front to the back. Or you click the square button on the camera itself, and it's going to do the same thing. So you could use either lens to be able to use this single lens mode. Now, if you click this again, we could go to boost mode. Now, boost mode is 4K 120 frames per second. So if you want that super slow motion, then you can switch it over to single lens mode and you can get that boost. Now, when you could do this, you could go into your settings and you can change a few options. So you have 4x3 or 16:9, 120 frames per second. If you bump down to 2.7K, it's also 120 frames per second. However, you can also turn on stabilization. So you can put on your rock steady stabilization, and it shows that your focal length is equivalent to like a 6mm. So this is a super wide lens. So you're shooting super wide, super slow, and you can have stabilization. So it's going to be a smooth shot. And with these modes, you still have the same loop recording or pre-roll recording if you want to use that with any of these modes. So what are the other single lens modes? So we click over, you have Super Night, which is the same type of mode that you had on the 360. It's just better in low light situations. And then we click over and you just have video. So with video, you have a few more options. We'll swipe up. You could go up to 5K or 16:9 or 4x3. And then you have either a standard look, which is kind of like a de-warped, so you don't have that bubble, or you can make it extra wide, and then you could turn on your stabilization or you can turn it off. So if you just want to use this camera similar to like an action camera, you put it on the single lens mode, and then you have some more options that make it feel more like an action camera when you're out filming. All right, so let's go back to just 360 and let's go to panoramic video so that we could go through everything else that you're going to see on screen. As I mentioned, you can scroll around at any point when you're in this 360 mode. And then if you want to snap back to center, you just click the square and it goes back. Now in the upper left-hand corner, this shows how much time you have left recording with the memory that you have in the camera. And on the right, it shows how much battery you have left. Now, the only other button that you see on the screen is the playback button. So you can click this on the left-hand side, and it shows you everything that you've recorded on the camera. So you could click the upper left-hand corner and see all the footage that you've been recording with this camera. And then you could play it back. You could even look around if we go to one of these photos and be able to look at everything. And the same works for video as well. Now, any point you hit the X, you go back to your menu and you swipe right, and it goes back to the camera record screen. Now, besides everything you see on screen here, we also have some deeper menus. So if you scroll down, everything's like a swipe on the screen. This is your deeper menu options. And we have two sets of menus here that we can go through. So there's 16 options in this deeper menu. The first one is just saving your user settings. So whatever settings that you're currently on, you can go in here and save these as a custom mode. And these you can use as a quick mode when you click the side button. And it's also just a way that you could save your settings whenever you want to make sure that you always use the same settings again and again. So you just click this, you hit custom, tap the plus icon. It's going to show you what your settings are, and you can click confirm. Now, when you click your power button just once, you could see that it's now added as an option onto your menu. So you have photo, video, and now you have this panoramic video D-Log 8K 30. This is what I have set up right now, and this is what I've been filming in. Swipe down, the next menu is quick shot. So this is that same quick shot menu. When you go into the quick shots and you tap the upper right-hand corner, this is where you could all turn on or off any of these different modes as a quick shot. Now the next is for your wireless mic, and I'm going to do a whole section about wireless mics so I can show you how to use this. This is where you're going to connect them and also change all your settings. Now the gear icon is going to go into a deeper menu of settings. So we have snapshot. When you press the shutter button when the camera's turned off, the camera will automatically turn on and do whatever you have set up in here. So now, right now, mine's set up to last panoramic mode, or I could set it up to that custom mode that I set up, the panoramic 8K D-Log-M, so that every time I just hit record, instead of powering on the camera, it's just gonna power on the camera automatically and start recording. Now you can turn off your screen when you're recording. So basically, if you're recording and you don't need to look at your screen, go in here and set the time. Mine's set to a minute. So basically, after a minute of recording, the screen is just gonna go dark. So this way it preserves some battery life, especially when you're not needing to see the screen when you're just recording. So if it's out on a pole, you don't need to see that screen. Now you could put a password on your album if that's something that you want to do so people can't access your photos or videos. You can auto power off. So if you just leave this camera sitting here and you're not touching it, you haven't done anything, it will automatically turn off, and you can set this up. Mine is set to 5 minutes, but you could change it depending on how quickly you want it to turn off. You can have your display always on. You can have your LEDs always on. You could have your bit rate. You could change this. This is going to allow the camera to record more data. So when you're recording, ideally, you'll probably want to do it high to get the best look out of your footage and capture the most amount of data. Now, when in your grid mode, this turns a grid on your image when you're looking through the screen. So you can turn this on. There's a grid, there's a diagonal, and then there's a grid plus a diagonal. So if we turn this on, go back to the main screen, you can see now that there's framing lines. I don't really need this because I'm usually framing in my editing software, but this is an option, especially if you're using single lens mode, so that you can see how you're framing your shot. Now there's the USB mode. This allows you to pull your data using the USB-C cable off of the camera. There's an option for a built-in mic audio backup. So you could turn this on and it's always going to record a backup of your audio on the camera itself. Now you could attach a Bluetooth remote controller. So if you have one of these, you could hook this up to the 360 and then be able to control the camera using this controller. So this is actually pretty cool. If you hook, say, the 360 to the outside of your vehicle or something like that, you could see data on the Bluetooth controller and be able to start and stop the recording. This is something I just picked up, and it's something that I'll be using when I'm mounting this in different ways and trying to get interesting shots and not always having to run out to the camera to press record, start, and stop, especially doing stuff like in my Jeep where we're going down a trail and I want to record specific sections. Now, this is also where you could change your wireless connection information. You have naming management, which changes the file naming structure. You have your horizon calibration. So if there's anything going on with your horizon, you can go in here and recalibrate. You can do your language, date and time, factory reset, and then there's some information. That's like the deep menu. If we go back to this one layer back, there's a few more options here on screen. So we have orientation lock, so that when you spin the camera vertical or horizontal, it just always stays in the same orientation. So when this is off, and we go back and we rotate, you can see how everything rotates with you. So all the data will switch backwards and forwards, and you could turn this on or off. Now the next is a screen lock. So you could tap this, it locks the screen. And so no matter what you do when you're out filming, it just locks the screen and you swipe up to unlock. Might be good if you don't want to mess up your settings when you have this in your bag or it's turned on and you're touching it in different ways. Now next to that is editing assistant. You can turn this on and DJI's software is going to go through and come up with ideas on what it thinks looks best for your editing, and you can bring it into MIMO, and it's going to give you pre-edits on some of your footage. It's not a feature I really use that often, but when you enable this, it looks for interesting things that are happening within your shot. Now, the next is hand gestures. So you could turn on gesture control, and then you could do different gestures with your hands to be able to start and stop recording. So if we turn this on, you could set up the start capture and it will show you a little animation. So you go like this, it's going to start recording. And you can see it's starting to record, and you put the hand up again and it stopped the recording. So it might be something that's kind of cool, especially if you use this, you put it on a tripod away from yourself, you put your hand up like this, it's going to start the recording. You don't have to run over, hit the button. You could see the recording light here on the other side, so you know it's going to be recording. Put the hand up, it's going to stop recording. Now, the first option on the next screen is your lens protection. So if you have like a transparent lens protection that goes on both lenses to be able to protect them so that don't get scratched. You turn this on, it's going to change a little bit how the algorithm works with the stitching. Now, the next thing is voice control. So you could do the same type of thing as gesture control, but this is now using your voice. So you choose your language. I'm going to go to English, start recording, stop recording, take photo, or shut down. So let's go back. We have voice on. Start recording. It's going to start that recording. Stop recording. So it's as simple as that. There's a few gesture controls. There's a few voice commands. Makes it easy so you don't always have to touch the camera physically, especially if you have it mounted in different places. Now, the next option is for your timer shooting. So if you want to set this camera up to start recording at a specific time, say you know that midnight you want to start this recording and do something with the stars. Well, you can set this up in here, turn this on, and you have your date and time set up. You tell it what you want it to do, at what time you want to start, and the duration that you want it to record for. And then the camera will shut off, and then at that time, it's going to turn on and start the recording. Okay, next is twist shot. So you could turn this on, and now you twist the camera twice, and it's going to start recording. Started recording. See, the red light's on, twist twice, and then it stops recording. There's a lot of interesting ways to start and stop recording and control this camera. Bluetooth, voice, gesture, twist. It's all set up for different ways that you're going to use this camera, whether you're mounting it somewhere, you're putting it away from yourself, or you have it out on an extension pole. You can use any of these modes to be able to start and stop the recording without having to actually touch the camera. You also have the option to be able to set up your wireless earbuds and connect them directly to your Osmo 360. You could turn on your brightness. So right now it's super low, but you can make this bright depending on where you're filming. I'm in a dark room, so it's low, but if you're outside, you could turn this brightness up. There's this memory card option, and this is where it shows all your storage. So how much is on my internal, how much is on my SD card. And this is also where you'll go through and format your internal storage and your SD card. So if you need to erase everything, you go in here. And then the last option is for sounds. Mine's set to low, but you can turn this on. So when you touch things, like you hit record or you quick change between the quick shot modes, the camera's going to make noise. So you could turn this fully off if you want it to be silent, or you could change high, medium, or low. And when we're back on this home screen, you could see that when you turn a feature on, it's going to be up near the battery. So right now I have Editing Assistant enabled, and you can see that little icon pops up right there. So overall, it is a simple camera to use, especially if you're just recording video, panoramic video. You just turn it on, hit record, put the camera out there. But there is a lot of these options that allow you to customize it, be able to use it for exactly the way that you need to use it to capture the footage or photos that you're going out and shooting. Now, when you are switching between the different modes, you just want to make sure that you always know which mode you're on before you press record, because there's been plenty of times where I've flipped it to a different mode, and then I thought I was still in the panoramic 360, which is what I typically just shoot for, getting this kind of footage where I can reframe the shot later. But there's been times where I've had it set to single lens mode or, a time-lapse mode or something like that. And then I end up shooting a bunch of footage and it's not usable. So just be aware of what lens mode that you're in so that you don't mess it up and end up shooting a bunch of footage and having to go back and reshoot it again. Or you just miss the shot entirely because you can't recreate whatever it is that you're filming using this camera. Something to keep in mind. All right, let's talk accessories with the DJI Osmo 360. This is the main thing that I've been using with this camera, the extension pole. This is the one from DJI, and on the end of it, it has the magnetic clip mount. So just like all of DJI's other cameras, you could use this magnetic clip. It secures. It's not going to come off. I've been throwing this thing around and it doesn't fall off. Now you could also use an extension rod with a 1/4-20, but the other big thing is I like to have a tripod on the end. And I actually got a pretty big tripod so that when I set this down, there's no chance of it tipping over. If you take one of those little tiny tripods, well, there's a better chance that it's going to tip and fall. And you want to be able to extend this out. Kind of the main thing you need. This is like really the majority of what you're going to film with this camera. Now, beyond this, there's a few other mounts I would consider. One is a suction mount. So I use suction mounts all the time when I'm using this camera with my car. So if I wanted to get some car shots, some driving shots, then I want to be able to suction it for spots around the outside of my car. Or if you just have a window, you want to suction it onto a window, it gives you a great spot to be able to just mount this camera. Now, the other accessory I would suggest for mounting would be clamps. And these are the kind of clamps that you can hook onto a pole. So I use these with this camera when I was out four-wheeling. I put the camera out away from myself to be able to get a shot of me riding on the four-wheeler. You could also use this with bicycles, motorcycles. You just want a clamp that's going to be able to hook onto bars. And there's a bunch of different versions out there, but you just want one that's stable so that the camera doesn't drop. Now, another thing with your extension pole is when it's extended, you don't want a whole lot of flex in that pole, because what will happen is the camera will sag or it will bob up and down a lot, and you'll get either wobble in your footage or you'll actually start to see the pole in your footage. This is one thing you really have to consider when you're working with an extension pole. Make sure you're using one that goes straight out from the camera. I shot a ton of footage with this camera using the wrong extension pole, and there was a little bit of an offset, and you could see, here's some footage from that. There's a little black circle that basically ruins all the shots because you don't get that magic floating stick anymore, because now there's this black blob kind of over the image. Now, this is also something to look at with your extension poles. You want to extend it out, and you want to do some tests to make sure that it's not sagging and you're starting to see that pole in your footage. Now, beyond mounting, the other things I would consider is a wireless microphone. So right now I'm using the DJI Mic 3, and I just pair this wirelessly with the Osmo 360. And a lot of this beginner's guide, whenever I'm using the Osmo 360, I have this microphone paired wirelessly so you could get some audio. And I've been switching this wireless between my camera here, getting this audio, and then putting it on this camera and then walking around, getting shots with the 360. Audio is super important, and having a wireless microphone makes it so that you can get good audio without having to attach anything to the outside of this camera. Now, the only other thing I would consider getting would be some extra batteries. So you could get a 3-battery charger with the Osmo 360. You could get 3 different batteries. That way, you'll never run out of battery when you're out filming. Now, this camera does have 128 gigabyte internal memory, so you don't actually need to put in a micro SD card. However, if you're going to be using more footage than 128 gigabytes, then I highly suggest getting a big micro SD card, adding that to this camera. And then if you want to mount it in different ways on yourself, like a chest harness, you could get a chest harness or you could get a head mount. Basically, any mount that you would use for one of your action cameras, you could use this camera. So it really depends on how you plan on using your DJI Osmo 360, but there's a lot of, and so just think through the different ways that you're going to use this camera, find the different mounting options, and then beyond that, a stick, batteries, card. It's all you really need to be able to get some really creative shots with this camera. In this section, let's talk about how you get interesting looking footage when you're out filming. And this is going to be how you actually use the camera. So we're doing a walk and talk right now. And the cool thing about DJI Osmo 360, when you use the extension pole, it hides it. So the camera essentially just becomes a floating camera. And I have the DJI Mic 3 right here. So we could do this walk and talk. You have good audio coming from the microphone. You have the visuals coming from this floating camera that's out in front of me, and you can't see the extension pole. Now, this is a shot that shows you kind of the setup that I have. It's simple. It's a pole with the camera on the end. And this is the height that I would typically use when I'm filming this kind of walk and talk style footage. The camera's at about eye level, because when I normally shoot walk and talk style footage with other cameras, or I have a camera, say, on a tripod or something like that, I keep it around eye level, and that's a good height when I'm talking to camera. But with your 360 camera out on an extension pole, height is one of the factors that's going to change the look of the footage. This is eye level. But if I was to go higher, all of a sudden, it completely changes the look of what this camera is seeing, because you're pointed down at me. And so if you wanted to do like a walk and talk, you might not necessarily want the camera up here unless you're trying to see, what's going on around me down below. Maybe I'm standing on the edge of the cliff and you want to see down low, then yeah, throw the camera up high. You could see that angle. But you could also drop the camera down low. So now you're down at the ground. You're seeing my feet. Those are kind of, front and center. And I'm up here and you're looking up at me. See the sky. It's a different shot, but you can't really see what's going on over there. You want to think about your horizon. Where do you want the horizon when you're looking at the height of your camera? So that's the first thing that you can really change to create some unique looking footage. Play with your height, eye level, lower, go higher. You could even go straight down and have this top down shot. And now it's kind of like a drone hanging out above me. So you want to think about the height of the camera. Now, beyond height, the other factor that's really going to change the look of your camera is the positioning around your subject or you, whoever you're filming. Right now, you're right in front of me. But if you start thinking like a clock and we start going in a circle, it's really going to start changing the look and feel of the footage. So let's go to 3 o'clock. You're off to the side. You're a little bit below eye level. There's a bug on me somewhere. Flew away. But this would be a good shot if you're doing something like riding a bike, maybe on a motorcycle. You're on a boat. It's out to the side. You get this kind of side view of everything that's going on. And again, when you do these different angles, you start playing with the height. If you want more sky, you drop it down low. See all these clouds and everything. If you want more ground, you bring it up high. And it's going to change the way that the footage looks. Height, perspective, angle, all of this is important. Now, let's take this further. Let's go behind. This is a cool shot. This is kind of that behind the head, 6 o'clock. You know, if we're hiking, I put the pole just right on my shoulder. You can't see the pole, so it feels like the camera's just floating behind. And if I wanted to go explore somewhere, let's go off trail here. We're gonna go exploring. We keep this about, head level, eye level. You're over my shoulder, seeing where I'm going. And we could play around with this. Let's bring the camera up a little bit. And I'm just pulling the camera up. You could kind of see this area that I'm exploring. Going into the bush over here. What is going on? Hopefully there's no mountain lions, coyotes, skunks. They're all over here. So you could have this over the shoulder, which is always a cool kind of third person viewpoint that is really going to just be a great shot to capture when you want to take that viewer on a journey with you and they're kind of coming along where you're going. Now let's take it to another spot. Let's go maybe back corner. So this changes it up. So this is like 7, 8 o'clock. So it's not a straight side shot, but it's kind of back off to the left corner. You could do the same thing, the front left corner. And so if you just think like a clock, it really allows you to start coming up with some different shots. So it's not always the same shot right in front, because one of the issues that will come up if you're filming and you're doing, say, like the same shot from the front again and again, is your footage is just going to be boring. Like, yeah, it's cool, you're using a 360 camera, but you want to think in this way of changing your angle. So which direction you're filming from. Are you in front? Are you off to the side? Are you behind? Are you off to one of the corners up here? And then you also want to play around with your height. So you're really changing the perspective of how things look. So now that we're starting to climb this mountain, I might go a little higher than eye level so that you can see everything in the distance out there. And you get more of this view, this vantage point, seeing everything. Versus if I was down low, you kind of lose that. It's not really the same kind of feeling when you're doing this hiking, walk and talk. So my suggestion for you is really take your camera out, get into nature, just do a walk and play around with these different perspectives. Go see how you move the camera around to change these different shots. Now that I'm walking down the hill, we put this over my shoulder, and now you get this huge landscape where you can see everything of where we're at. Whereas if we're going this way, you're just seeing the hill. It's not as exciting. So play around with these different angles that you can get with your DJI Osmo 360 and film everything. Film a bunch. Film, way up high. See how this looks versus way down low. And see what you could do with this camera to create some unique perspectives. And this whole section, just so you know, I was using the auto tracking in the DJI Studio software so that even though I'm swinging this camera around, moving it all around the clock, the software is actually tracking me the entire time so that I just always stay centered. That's one of the really cool things when you're filming in this way. You just put on that auto track and then you just track your subject. So wherever you put the camera, it's just a floating camera in the sky, and it creates some really cool footage. Now, one of the things you need to think about is how you're going to use this camera without holding it or out mounting it on something. Right now, I have this camera actually stuck into the crack in the ground. Now you could use a tripod or, use your environment and actually stick it in things. So let me show you what this looks like. You could see I could have put it on a tripod, but I also just found this crack and I stuck the pole in it. And what that does is it makes this camera invisible. Pretty cool to be able to use this. So use your environment. See if there's places you could stick this pole, because if you can hide this pole into something, it becomes an invisible spot. Or you just use a little tripod and the tripod's going to be right at the bottom. You'll see a little bit of the tripod legs. But otherwise, you want to think about this as a camera that's not just a camera you mount or you hold. You want to be able to use it as a standalone camera, kind of off by itself sometimes. I mean, look, if you look over there, you can see a crow that's just hovering with the wind that's up here. It's kind of cool, right? But as you mount the camera and you put it on a tripod, you can actually move it around. So let's create a shot here. Let's make something interesting. So I'm down here. I'm going to reposition the camera out at the view so we see the kind of clouds, the sun coming through. And I'm going to have the camera slowly turn my way as I'm hiking up this hill. And you get this shot that reveals me hiking, going up the hill. You're going to follow me. We're going up. And then I'm going to keep rotating the camera. And now the camera is going back to the viewpoint. And now it's back on me. So you could play around with perspective and create moving shots that otherwise wouldn't necessarily have motion. This is really cool as a solo creator. Finding places to put this camera and then move the camera as you interact with the space just opens up a whole world of potential to create some interesting moving shots that otherwise wouldn't have movement. And I'm just having it on auto tracking now, so I'm just moving around and you can see how the camera tracks. And even if I'm just doing my A-roll, my talking to camera, whatever kind of video I'm making. For this one, it's a tutorial. If you use a 360 camera, well, you can move around, have it auto track as you move around in the software, which I'll show you how to do this. And you don't have to worry about having someone operate as you move around. You could be coming over here talking about this beautiful view, but hold on, let's go this way. And now I'm talking about this fence, but oh, I need to go this way. And now we need to talk about this trail. There's something up this trail. We got to go see it. So you can see how just the camera in one spot. We've moved this camera so much. We've shown so many different perspectives. And it's all done without actually moving the camera. That's why having the extension pole and a little tripod makes it a really powerful camera to use. All right, so the last thing that you can do with this camera is create moving shots. So swinging this camera around to be able to create some dynamic footage. We've got our subject here, this giant plant. It'll work for this. So one thing that you could do is actually move around your subject and create kind of an orbit style shot, something you might see in a drone move, but you could do it with a 360. So if you start on one side of your subject and you just kind of walk in a line or walk in an arc and you go to the other side, well, when you get into your editing software, you can dynamically shift this footage from one side to the other and it creates a pivoting motion around. Let's take this further. I'm just going to walk around and I'm not really caring where my camera is pointed, because in the editing software is when I could actually point the camera and make it actually focus in on my subject. Now let's do a jib-like shot. So I pull the extension pole out. I start down low. You see a lot of sky and we want to reveal where we're at. So I'm going to swing up and away. And now you reveal this landscape. Let's try that again. So I'm down and I swing up and away, and you reveal the landscape that you're at. So moving this camera, floating around objects makes it so that you can create really dynamic footage. Let's do this to you. So we're close in on you over there, and I'm gonna swing out and around to reveal where we're at. And then I'm gonna zoom past and race through and reveal the wider canyon. So the big thing when you're thinking about movement is how are you actually going to shift the camera around? Because that's what you have to do when you're out filming. You don't have to worry about where the camera is necessarily pointed because it's pointed everywhere. So it's more about what is the dynamic shot that you're trying to capture, and like, where do you want to start? Low, high, high to low? Do you want to circle around something? Do you want to start in something and go out? Or do you want to start outside something and go in? All you have to do is put the camera in these spots, move from one spot to the other, and then in your editing software, you can play around with your width, and you can play around with how fast it turns and transitions from one spot to the other. And you also could do these transitions where it reveals maybe your character. So let's do one. We're gonna put the pole way up in the hot sky, so it's way up there. You're gonna have this big wide view where you're seeing everything that's going on. You're seeing like this cool landscape, and then the camera's gonna drop down. And now you're gonna reveal that, oh, we're hiking behind someone as they go down this hill. So here's another sample of a moving style shot. If you point just straight down, hi, I'm down here, I'm just walking, and I just have the camera up above me. But when I actually look out to the horizon, to my left or to my right, you have this kind of dynamic shot where the camera's just floating and you get this kind of dolly effect. Now what you could do is mix this with a movement. So you could either just have it static one side, you just have this kind of dolly shot as you're moving through a landscape, or you could rotate, go from one side to the other and really create an interesting moving shot that almost feels like a drone. And it's just gonna give you some dynamic footage of whatever place that you're at. So the three factors that you really want to think about when you're filming, it's really going to make your footage, more dynamic. A, it's height, how high the camera is in relation to your subject. B, where it is. Think of a circle around your subject where you're filming. Where do you want to put that camera? And C, movement. Is there any type of movement that you want to create when you're playing around with this camera? Do you want to have the camera go through stuff? Do you want to have it swoop up and away? Do you want to have it spinning around? All of these factors are super important, and all three working together is what's going to help you make footage that's going to really look unique for your edit. All right, let's talk about attaching wireless microphones to your DJI Osmo 360. So right here, I have the DJI Mic 3. You're going to use the same process for the DJI Mic Mini or the DJI Mic 2. All three of these mics work wirelessly with this 360 camera, and you could actually use two microphones with this camera at any time. So if you're working with two people, you both can be hooked up wirelessly to record audio to the camera. It makes everything super easy when you're out filming. So the process is pretty simple. You're going to want to turn on your 360 camera, turn on your wireless microphone, and then you want to put it into pairing mode. So on this one, I just hold the linking button, and then you'll see it blink blue and green repeatedly. You swipe down on your Osmo 360, go to the mic option, and then you're going to have two microphones pop up, and they're both grayed out. You just tap one of these and wait for it to automatically connect. So it takes a couple seconds, and then it'll tell you when it's connected, and immediately all your information shows up. So if we go back to our record screen, now you see a green bar at the top, and it shows your audio levels. So now I'm talking into the microphone, and you can see that it's, bouncing up and down. And now we're getting audio with the wireless microphone. But there's a few things we need to set up before we hit record. So let's go back to that wireless microphone menu. And there's a few things that you could see. So right away, it shows you your battery life, and it also shows you how much data you have left on your wireless mic. So if you're using the Mic 3 or the Mic 2, you can do a backup recording on the microphone itself, With the wireless mic mini, there is no backup recording. Now, the first option is for monitor volume. So this is when you're playing back your footage or listening to when you're recording, and you can set this from 0 to 100. And this is just what it's going to play back in your headphones. Now, there's a few transmitter settings that we need to look at. The first one is this low cut filter. And this is going to cut out lower frequencies. And so if you have issues with lower frequencies, you want less rumble in your audio, this might be something to turn on. Now, you could also turn on adaptive gain control. This is something that I like to use so that my audio doesn't peak when I'm recording. And so you could turn this off, you can have automatic, or you can have dynamic. And that's where you think the audio is going to be up and down and all over the place. Then put it on that dynamic mode. I just leave it on automatic, and then it makes sure that my audio just always sounds good when I'm using one of these microphones. Now, there's an option for loop recording, and this is similar to what I talked about with loop recording with video earlier, but it will record over the oldest audio on this backup transmitter if it fills up. Now, you also have your file option. So it has original file, or it has original plus edited file. So you could have the original 32-bit float file, or you can have the one that has the editing built in. So the 32-bit float file is basically the raw audio out of this microphone. So when you're listening to it in the camera, it's going to have whatever settings you have turned on applied. So if it has that automatic gain control or the low cut filter, that's the file that you're going to be hearing when you're listening to it back from the 360 footage. Whereas the original DJI Mic 3 or Mic 2 will have the 32-bit float raw file that does not have any of this editing done to it. Now, with this menu option, you can have the original file plus the edited file recorded to your DJI Mic 3. And if you don't want to do any sort of backup recording, you can just turn this off, and then it's whatever the camera records is the only audio that you're going to get. Now, there's an option so you could start up when the microphone powers on, it auto starts recording. And that's basically whenever you turn on this microphone, it's just automatically recording a backup. Depends on how much you're worried about losing your audio, but it is a good option if you just want to make sure you never lose audio when this thing is turned on. Now you have noise cancellation with the button on the side, so you can turn on noise cancellation on this microphone, and you can have this set up so that the button on the side turns this on and off. You could turn off your LEDs, you can turn off your vibration, you can auto power off. And so basically, if this is not being used, it will automatically turn off on its own. And then you can also format the data that's in this wireless transmitter, and it shows you your version at the bottom. So there is a lot of options with these wireless microphones, but most of it has to do with just the recording that you're getting on the backup of this little transmitter. And this allows you to fully control the transmitter without having to connect a receiver or anything else. You can control everything you need to on the DJI Mic 3 or Mic 2 just from the Osmo 360. So this is a great thing to add on to the Osmo 360. And you can see in a lot of this video, I just pair this DJI Mic 3 to the 360, and then I can do walk and talks and I can chat while I'm using that 360 camera. And it just makes it a super easy experience. All right, in this section, we're going to go through the DJI MIMO app, and this is one of the ways that you're going to control the camera and also edit your footage. So now we're getting more into the editing side of working with this footage and what you can really do with it. But first, when you have the DJI MIMO app installed, you just click the button in the bottom center, and then you're going to have to find your camera and join it and connect it. Now, once it's connected, you might have some options come up for an update. So always make sure your camera's updated to the newest firmware, because if there's issues, DJI is going to fix those issues. But now that we have the camera connected, you can click this camera icon and it can go to your camera screen. So this is going to have basically all of the same settings that we went through on the camera itself, but now it's all controlled via the app. So in the bottom center, you can go through and flip between your different modes. Let's go over to video. In the upper left-hand corner, you can go through and check some of your general settings, but also this is where your pro settings are. So you could turn your pro settings on or off, your grid, your white balance, your loop recording, that's all up here. And now that I have my pro settings turned on, I can click my resolution, my frame rate, 8K 30 frames per second. I can go over here to my exposure, set my shutter, my ISO. I can either do auto or manual. So you have some general options, and then you click over here and you have all of your video options. So you could turn on your pro mode, your loop recording, your grid, white balance, your D-log. I'm going to turn on color recovery because I have it in D-log. You have an overexposure and a histogram. So these are tools to see if it's too bright. So I'm going to turn on my overexposure and my histogram. And now you'll see that zebras pop up where things are overexposing. So out there in the window, you can see it's overexposing out there, and then this light because it's super bright up here. Now you also have this histogram that shows all of your exposure information from the darkest on the left to the brightest on the white. And here in this room, you can see that it's pretty dark. So everything's kind of moving towards that left-hand side. I can X out of this, go back up here, turn off my overexposure warning, and this is what the footage is going to look like. Now, at any point, you could scroll around the screen just as on the camera itself and be able to look around your full 360. And you can pinch to widen out, or you can pinch in with your fingers to zoom in. So I made it wide, and you can see my full room. You got this tiny planet when I move my finger around, or I can zoom in, and I can look at something specific like myself. So kind of cool if you want to see what's going on with your frame. It's easier than looking on this little screen. You can use your phone and really get a sense of what the footage looks like when you're scrolling around. Now, the next menu option is for frame rate resolution. You have your exposure next, and this you could set to manual or auto. You have your home button, which goes back to this main DJI MIMO home screen. Next, down below that is your screen lock orientation. So now that I rotate my phone up or down, it's never going to rotate. Whereas I turn that off, the whole phone will shift when I go horizontal or vertical. Now down below, you could see your exposure. So you see your shutter speed, ISO, and your exposure compensation. And below that, you have a few options. You have your library, which goes into the camera, and you can see everything that you have recorded, photo, video, and you can favorite. You can also click on any of these at any point, and there's going to be some different options here. You can download it to your phone, you can change the color, and you could go through and do aspect ratios, screenshots, add a dashboard, a bunch of other things. And I'll show you this when we get into the editing side of the MIMO app. Next to that is single lens mode or dual or 360 mode. So you switch between these, and that just goes to your different modes. You have your record button or your take a photo right in the center. You have your lens reset that switches between the front lens and the back lens. And also if you move the camera, say looking up, you click this, it's going to recenter it. And then you have your custom modes. So you can go through here, adjust your custom modes, change them, add them, do whatever you need to do to be able to save your modes when you're out filming. So basically everything is in here pretty much the same. They're just kind of in a little bit different areas. Let's go back home. Let's get into editing because this is where the real power comes with a 360 camera. You basically have two ways that you can edit your footage in the MIMO app. So you could go to your album and you can go shot to shot and just edit one shot individually and then export that. Or you could use your editor and put a few shots together and edit them together like you're using an editing software. So let's just go into album first. Let me show you what you can do with individual shots. So we're going to pull up a shot here. We're going to use one of the 360 shots when we're out filming. Use tap on it, it's going to load it, and now you have some different options to be able to edit this. If you want to see playback at any time, just tap the center of the screen, and it's going to start playing back your footage, and you can scroll around and look around your full 360 image. But let's stop this, and your timeline is down here in the center, and you can scrub this forward or backwards. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go right to here when I have the camera extended away from myself. And then we could go through and start tweaking some of the options. Upper left-hand corner, that just takes you back to that main home screen. Next to that, 3 dots, you have some basic information. So right here, you could go through, you could favorite, you could delete this. It shows you your information about this footage. And then also it shows you your preview mode. So you can either have it be crisp and more HD, or you can make it smoother when you are tweaking and editing in the DJI MIMO app. And then you can have it just always stabilize, or you could turn the stabilization off if that's something you want to do. And then you could also use this option called direction lock. And basically that means if you're set in one direction facing this way on one of the lenses, it's always going to hold that direction when you move the camera around. So a direction lock would be good if you had the camera, say, mounted to your chest and you wanted that POV shot. And so you want your footage to always be in line with where the camera is going. Turn the direction lock off and it makes it so you can freely move around and you don't lock yourself to one orientation based on the camera. You do it based on where you want the image to be held. So if the camera spins, your image isn't going to spin. So let's do some editing so I can show you how this works. Next to that, you have your frame. We're going to leave it on 9x16. We're going to do a vertical, but this is where you can change that up. You have a download button. You have 1080p. Basically, all of your export settings are up here. Then underneath that, you have your image settings. This is where you set up if you have that transparent lens protector on. Underneath that, you have HD or smooth. So it's the same thing in that deeper menu I just showed you, but here's a way to do it just on the screen. And then you have this de-warp feature. So if you don't want it to be so bubbly looking, you can turn your de-warp on and off. And so it just basically changes the perspective a little bit so that you don't have that bubble effect that you get with wide lenses. And now all your tools are on the bottom. So how your edit works is basically you find the shot that you want. And let's say you want it to be here. You click the little plus icon and you're going to add a keyframe. Now, let's say I want to go 4 seconds. And in that 4 seconds, I want the camera to rotate and look out at the view. I click another keyframe. Now, when we go to this first keyframe and play back, you can see that the camera is going to go through and do that motion that I've added between both of those shots. And then it's going to hold in that position. Now, if I wanted to do more than just change the position, what if I want to change the width of the lens, I could zoom out and say go tiny planet. And if I'm on that keyframe, it's going to be making adjustments to that keyframe. So let's go back to this first keyframe, hit play. And now you can see it turns while also doing that tiny planet effect, and pause it. So the whole thing with editing is you're setting keyframes and you set where you want the camera pointed, the width of the lens. And if you want anything to happen between those keyframes, you just go to the second keyframe, mark it, and change the endpoint. So you're setting your start point and end point with each keyframe. And then if you ever want to delete one, you hover over that keyframe and hit the minus button. Let's add a keyframe here. And you have some options pop up when you hit a keyframe. So the asteroid is what I showed you. That's where you can zoom out. You have an ultra wide, a wide, a less distortion, and then you also have rotation. So let's rotate the camera upside down as I spin, as I go from this keyframe to the second. And you can see the camera's now twisting. So you could really play around with this footage. You could see how you could get some really interesting shots by changing the width, changing how it looks, changing the direction, but then also changing the rotation. All of it is fair game. You can do whatever you want in your edit. Now, all this footage you've been looking at is log. Let's fix that. So if we go over to log recovery, you're going to find it on this menu down here. Now you're going to have a better looking shot because it's going to have your exposure properly balanced and it's also going to add some saturation. There's a lot of other options down here in this menu. So you can trim this shot. Say I want to start here. I can go through and I could set up sections that I want to use. So let's go a little bit further. I'm going to trim off this introduction. Now I trimmed off that beginning. So it just starts here where I'm already on this cliff. I cut out that little section of me extending the pole. Now the next option is tracking. So if you don't want to keyframe each shot and you just want to say track you as you're doing something, a walk and talk is a good example of this as I'm doing here. You hit this tracking button and then you draw a box around your subject and you start tracking. And now it's going to be automatically tracking my motion. So I'm going to be spinning around with this camera, moving around, and it's going to keep me centered the entire time and always keep a good shot. So that way you don't really have to think about it. It's always looking at you. And this is a great option. This is something I use all the time when I'm doing A-roll, just because I know I want to keep myself in the shot and I don't want to have to sit there and keyframe every movement. I'd rather just have it track me. So now let's play back and you see when I play back, it's automatically tracked. I'm centered. Wherever I move with the camera, the tracking is always going to be holding on me. And if you want to delete the tracking, you can click on the tracking itself on the timeline and clear that at any point. Now, the next option for editing is called gyro frame. Now, this is interesting. So you turn this on, hit record, and now it's going to record the movements that I do in real time. So I'm spinning the camera around, and then I'm going to go to the asteroid and spin that around, do some crazy stuff, and hit stop. Now, instead of keyframing every single movement, going from spinning around to the asteroid and all that, it just recorded what I did with my fingers. So now when we play this back, you can see it's going to start showing you all that motion that we just did. And then it goes to the asteroid. So it's an easy way to do some complex editing without having to keyframe every little motion. Now you have some filters if you want to create some color effects on your footage. You have like these different preset looks that you can apply, or you could go through and adjust like your exposure, your brightness, your contrast, your highlights, your shadows, your whites, your blacks, your temperature, tint, saturation, vibrant, sharpness, and vignette. Basically all the same tools that you have on your phone. So you can adjust basically anything you want with your footage here on this shot. But then there's also glamour effects. So you could slim your face, you can play with your chin, you could smooth out, you can brighten, you can enlarge your eyes or lighten your skin. If you're doing shots of yourself, maybe this is something you want to play around with. And when you go back to this menu and we scroll over, you could see these same type of things. You have filter, color tuning, glamour effects. So you could pull these up at any point using this menu bar on the bottom. Now, at any point, you could also take a screenshot. So say I wanted to take a screenshot of this, I could take a screenshot and I can add DJI Osmo 360. I could put these frames on or these logos on, or none of that. I could screenshot the panoramic, so the full 360 view of what's going on. And I could also do live photos here. So you could pull sections out if you just want to pull photos from your video. Now, log recovery, we have that turned on. We can add music to the shot. We could change our video volume. We could also add a dashboard. So if you have this hooked to the Bluetooth remote, it will record your data of like cycling or running, and you can add a lot of this data on the screen. So on here, it allows me to do date and time, timer, and G-force, but you could add speed, route direction, total distance, elevation, gradient, pace, height indicator, water depth, power, torque, cadence, heart rate. So you can apply your data and be able to put it on screen. And there are these different modes already set up, like biking, moto, Avinox, running, hiking, diving. So kind of cool if that's something where you want to add your data on screen with whatever you're doing. Now you can add tag and you can reset all of these options. The biggest thing I want you to get out of this when you're working with footage is that you're going to be keyframing your shots. So say I want to start here, I hit my keyframe, I let this play, let's say 5 seconds. In that 5 seconds, I want to zoom out and rotate, hit another keyframe, maybe go a few more seconds. I'm going to rotate back, keyframe in, go even tighter, set a keyframe, and you just move between these different keyframes. And this is how you edit your footage. You could use the tracking, you could use the gyro frame. All this gives you that ability to be able to set up your shot, find exactly what you want to have as your framing, and then move. So if I just have the camera on a tripod here, but I'm moving around, I could keyframe myself moving in all directions. And you've been seeing this throughout this video. Whenever we're outside and I have this extended out on the pole, I was using the same editing software, going through tracking myself, or I was doing keyframes as I was moving the video around to show you the different things I'm talking about. Now, when you're done, you can just click export in the upper right-hand corner and this will save to your library. But there are some export options. So you click where it says 4K, you could change your resolution, you could change your frame rate, you could change your bit rate, your color depth, your noise reduction, and then you just hit export and this will save on your phone. Now, if you don't want to just edit an individual clip, you want to put a few of them together. That's where the editor comes into play. So back on this home screen, we go to our editor, we start a new project, we can go to our video, we could select a few of these shots, and you could do the same type of things and you could do the same type of editing, but it's more in this timeline views. But then you have the ability to move a bunch of these shots together and create a sequence. So if you don't plan on editing on your editing software on your computer, and you want to go through and just make your video on your phone, you have a full editor built right into DJI MIMO. However, the way that I work with 360 footage is that I bring it into my computer, I work with DJI Studio, and then I bring those shots into Final Cut Pro. So let's go into DJI Studio and let me show you how you do this editing on a computer, because on a phone's great. It makes it really easy to be able to do this anywhere, make shots really quick, upload them to social media. But if you are integrating this footage into bigger videos, if you're making a full YouTube video, you're combining with other cameras, your drones, your action cameras, whatever, then you're going to want to use the desktop version because it makes it a lot easier to just move between your editing software and DJI Studio so that you can get this footage in your computer and start making tweaks and really harness the ability of the 360 camera in your full editing workflow. All right, let's jump into DJI Studio. Let's dig into DJI Studio and how you can actually edit your 360 footage once you've pulled it off your camera. Now, DJI Studio is software that is on your computer, and you can either edit individual clips, bring them into your editing software, or you could go through and actually edit your full timeline in DJI Studio to be able to upload to social media or wherever you're posting your videos. So what I'm going to do is just break down everything you need to know on how to edit this footage using this software. So once you have it downloaded onto your computer, this is what the software looks right away. And you can see I have a few projects here that I've already worked on. But let's start a complete new project. Let's start fresh. So we're going to click Create Project. And you're going to end up with this window, which basically shows you all the different stuff that you could use to be able to edit your footage. Now we need footage to work with. So what we're gonna do first is get our 360 camera, and we're actually gonna plug this in and just edit straight off the camera itself. I'm gonna plug it into my computer using a USB-C, turn on the camera. You're gonna have this file transfer button. You're gonna click this. I'm gonna get the lens cap so that I don't scratch the lenses when I set it down. And now we're going to go back to our computer. And now you can see right here when we go to our file in the upper left-hand corner, we could go to our local files. So that's what's already on the computer itself. Or we could go to the DJI Osmo 360 and it's going to pull up everything that's on the camera. So you can work from footage that's on either source. And so I'll pull in some footage from my computer as well. So now we have all the local files. So here's some off-roading that I did. And then we have our Osmo 360 and this is the camera plugged in. So this is pretty cool because you can start right away editing without even having to bring your footage over to your computer. You can just connect the camera and start working on it. And the connection is fast, so you don't have to worry about lag time when you're working with the camera plugged directly into the computer. Now, there's two ways to view this footage. Now, I could use my cursor and click around and be able to look in a 16:9 image, or I can click this button at the top and this gives me the full panoramic view. So this gives me that full 360 image. I could see everything that's going on. And I could hit play and I could watch the footage back. Or I could go back to the viewfinder preview and scrub around. Now, we're not editing the footage yet. We're just looking at our footage. So if we go back to our local files, we scroll through, we're just looking at what we have. And I have my player timeline here, so I could scrub all the way forward and back. And I could watch through my footage. And I could go back to that panoramic view if I wanted to just see everything that's on the footage. So it's just a good way to kind of get a quick indication of everything that you have before you actually get in to start editing. Now you're going to have your file information over here on the right-hand side. So it shows the storage location, the date, the file size, resolution, frame rate, length, codec, and bit depth. So any information you need about the file type or what's going on, you'll find over here. But you're probably wondering, how do we start editing this footage? Well, let's find the first clip that we want to use. So I have this shot where I'm walking and talking up in the trails. And what I'm going to do is now pull this down to my timeline. So down on the bottom of DJI Studio, you have your timeline on where you edit your footage. So you just pull this clip down. And now we could start cutting. So we have a bunch of tools here to control our timeline. Let's start first with just finding our start and stop. So up here in the viewer, I could change my view, look around, and this isn't setting keyframes yet. This is just looking and pointing the camera, and I can hit spacebar to play. And so I have this walk and talk shot. And let's say I wanted to start right here. Well, I could split the clip or Command K. So the clip is now split into two. Now it doesn't delete anything yet. It just split the clip into two different individual clips. Now I could also have that same point and I could cut left. And so what that's going to do is cut and delete everything to the left. So now I just got rid of all of that intro that I didn't want to use. And if I do the opposite, cut right, let's say I want to end the clip here, I hit cut right, it deletes everything to the right of that clip. And if you don't want to use that cut right or cut left, you can use the split and then highlight and just hit backspace and delete. So a few different ways to trim down your clips using a cut feature, but you could also grab either end and just drag. So I can extend both of the ends of the clip back to the beginning, back to the end. And let's say I want to start here, this shot of me, I could grab the end of this clip and just pull it right to the cursor head. So different ways to kind of manipulate the footage. It's like other editing softwares. This is very similar to Final Cut Pro. That's the software I work in. So what we're doing right now in the timeline is just trimming up our clips. And we can work with one individual clip and just export that, or we could create a sequence of multiple clips and export that together. depending on how you want to work with your footage, you might just go one clip at a time, trim it up, do your editing with your keyframes, which we're going to get into next, and then export that individual clip, or create a sequence, put multiple clips down on this timeline, edit them all, and export as a complete file. So we have this first clip here. It's a walk and talk. Let's find another clip to work with this one. So I have this shot where we caught a fish. I can zoom out using my jog wheel on my mouse, see a little bit more what's going on. We caught a fish. So we just want that moment when we caught the fish. So let's scroll past all this underwater footage right to here. I'm going to cut left, and then we're doing catching the fish. Cut right. We just want that little shot sequence. And then I want to pull this other shot down, which is another fish that we caught in the net. And so same type of thing. Find the end point. So I want to start here. Cut left. The out point is to bring the net up. There's the fish, and we'll end it right there. And let's grab one more. Let's find one of these ATV shots. So this one, I'm holding the pole, riding the ATV through the forest. You can see I'm just using the viewer to kind of watch what's going on. Sure, let's use this one. Let's pull it down. It's a long clip, so let's find a section that we want to use. Let's use this section here. So I drop it down, and I want to get this side shot. So I'm going to cut left, get rid of all that, and we just want a little bit of time with this, and then I'm going to raise it up above me, go until about there. Cut right. Those are the shots we're using. So I have a walk and talk, I have some fishing shots, and then I have this ATV shot. Let's first work with this walk and talk shot. We haven't done any keyframes yet. We could just scroll around and look at the footage, but our tools to be able to actually move this 360 around and actually create movement with our camera, it's going to be these two down here. This one on the left is our keyframe, and this one on the right is our tracking, which tracking is going to be super useful for this walk and talk. We also have tools up here in the upper right. This is our inspector. So we have our perspective. We have a free perspective, or we have a direction lock. So this is where you want to lock in one direction. If your camera's facing forward this way, say you have it chest mounted, and you always just want to have that direction locked no matter what you move, you would come up here and click direction lock. Whereas most of the time when I'm working with this camera, the camera's kind of moving around freely. It's kind of dancing around. And so I'll use that free view so that I don't get stuck in one direction. And rather, I want the angle to stay locked on to say me, even if the camera twists, if it rotates, if it moves. That way I'm not worried about where the camera is pointing. Direction lock works great if you're using this camera as more of like an action camera and you want to have that perspective shift when the camera shifts. So let's keep it on free lock. Now there's a few different modes right here that you could use to be able to adjust the footage. You could do asteroid, which creates that tiny planet look. You have an ultra wide, you have a wide, which is a little bit less than the ultra wide, and then you have the de-warp, which is supposed to look more like a standard camera. So it gets rid of some of that bubble effect. These are just quick framings that you can use so that you can easily click between them. So say you just always want it to be de-warped, you just click the de-warp button and you're ready to go. Now also, this is going to be all your positioning data. So you see your field of view, your correction angle, your pan angle, your tilt angle, and your roll angle. And these you could adjust by just putting your cursor over either one and moving them around, or putting your cursor in the middle and moving it. The only one that's not going to be changed with your cursor is this roll. So that one you manually do over here in the inspector window. Now you could also do intelligent tracking here as well. So let's first keyframe. So this is the shot I want to start with. So I could either click a keyframe up here, or I could click it down here. And it's going to set a keyframe on the timeline. And I'm going to zoom in so we could see this shot filling up the timeline. So there's our first keyframe. So let's say I'm doing this walk and talk, and I want to move the camera around to see where we're going. There's my first keyframe. Let's move over to where the second keyframe is going to be. So it's over here. And I'm going to click this keyframe button again. Now when I play, camera's looking at me, hits that first keyframe, and then it points to the front and stops on that second keyframe. And then we could grab these and move these. If we want that to happen slower, we could spread it out. If we want it to happen quicker, we can make them closer. Let's click on the first keyframe. This shows us all of our data, and it also shows our keyframe animation. So what DJI has written here, it says animation can change the speed of perspective changes between keyframes and create different video effects. Video playback speed will not be affected. So this is just how it transitions from one shot to the other. So if I'm looking at me for this first shot, and then the camera's swinging around to the trail, these are different ways that that transition is going to happen. So you have a linear, so that's just going to smooth from one to the next. We have fast in, slow out, slow in, fast out, fast in, fast out, slow in, slow out, and just linear. So I like to use linear smoothing. It kind of feathers on either end and it makes it a smooth move. But let's do fast in, fast out so you can see the difference. So now as we play, it's going to quickly go, be slow in the middle, and then quickly out. So like for that shot, it didn't really look that good. So maybe we'll do something a little bit different. Let's do slow in and slow out. So it's going to be slow in and then slow out, but it's going to move quicker in the middle. And let's just do linear. So now when we're playing, there's not going to be any feathering whatsoever. It just goes from one to the other and then stops. And so it's kind of jerky on both sides. That's why I like to use linear smoothing with the DJI Studio. It seems to be the cleanest, where it gives me just a nice fade. But if you do want to do a snappy motion, then use that fast in, fast out, or the slow in, slow out, or the slow in, fast out, or fast in, slow out. Use one of those 4 options and really start playing around with them. Okay, so we got this shot of the trail. I'm going to switch this back to linear smoothing. Let's then swing back going this direction to me over here, add another keyframe. And so now, as we go to the trail, it's just going to keep spinning. And if we wanted to stop on that trail for a minute, we need to add another keyframe. So we stop here. Let's go like a second or two, add another keyframe, spin it back here. And now it's going to hang out on that trail for a second and then move around to me. And let's spread these out a little bit so it's a little bit slower. So it spins to the trail, holds there, spins to me. And if you don't like a keyframe, you can just grab them at any time and hit delete, and they're gone. So you just hit delete on your keyboard, backspace, and they're gone. I'm going to add this keyframe again. And now we're going to use intelligent tracking. So we did this keyframe where we slid to the trail. We see what's going in front. We're going to come back to me. And now I just want to track me from here. So I can click this intelligent tracking, and it works just like a DJI drone or any other DJI's products. You just draw a box around what you want to track, hit start tracking, and now it's going to automatically track based on whatever's going on camera. So I'm just walking and talking, and it's going to follow me and keep me centered the entire time. At any point, I can hit in track. And now on the timeline, you have this green bar. So when we hit this green bar, it's just going to be tracking me. That's pretty cool. So if you're doing a walk and talk and you just always want to keep yourself centered, you just put it on automatic tracking and then it will track you. Now I'm going to delete this because I don't like the fact that it's cutting off my feet down here on the bottom. So let's delete this tracking and let's track again, but let's change our framing. So I'm going to use my cursor and zoom out, or I'll click this ultra wide lens. I want this wider shot here, and I want to start tracking on this wide lens. So now I have a wider lens, it's tracking me, and we're going to let this run for a little bit, and done. And now you can see between this last keyframe and the track, there is this little transition, because here it's a tighter shot and then the track is a wider shot. So you have this little transition now where it widens out. So when you're doing your keyframes, you could also change the width of your lens. You could go from super tight to super wide and be able to keyframe those movements. The cool thing with a 360 camera is you get to have full control. You don't have to stay the same frame size every time. You can move in and out and play with zooms as well as moving the camera around. Now, this tracking's great. It's following me, but it's still cutting me off weird. So I'm going to stay on this tracking, but what I'm going to do is change my angle and change my position a little bit. And it's going to save it for that whole tracking section. So I want it to center me a little bit more and keep my feet in. So now when we play from this transition, it's going to widen out and it's going to track keeping my feet in because I adjusted the frame manually after it did the track. So now we have a much better shot. And we could even tweak that further. We could say maybe come here a little bit, give me a little space in front of me. And this shot here, maybe we'll start there. So when we spin around, it comes to me and then it zooms out and then it tracks, keeping my full body in the shot. So now we've used a few different features in unison to be able to create some dynamic movement on a shot where the camera was just being held like this. So we're doing all of this movement in the editing software and the camera's just sitting in one spot. So let's take this next shot. We caught this fish, and we want to catch the action of it. So let's go to this first frame of the fish coming out of the water, and let's add a keyframe right here. We could zoom in, we could zoom out. It's kind of fun to have this wide shot where you see all of us. And let's let this play. Swings over that way. So when that happens, let's swing the camera this way and maybe zoom in. Let's let this play. And so now the fish comes out of the water, the camera pans, and it zooms slightly to catch us. We go to this next shot, we have a big fish in the net, so we could go tight, add a keyframe here, let this play, add another keyframe, because I don't want the camera to move yet, and then I want to spin up to see what we're doing. So I come up to where we're at, and add this keyframe. And so now the shot is fish in the net, we caught it, swing up to see us in the boat. All right, so now we have this other shot, ATVing. So let's do an intelligent track here. Let's track us. It's going to track me on the ATV. But let's say when I swoop up, I'm going to end the track there, because when I go fully up there, I want to look straight down and I want to pull it out to an asteroid. So now as we're playing, let's reframe this, make sure it's exactly what we want. It's tracking me on this ATV, but as soon as I start moving up, I change the direction and go to the asteroid, and it makes that transition. So you can start to get creative with how you're moving the camera, playing with the tracking versus keyframes, widening in and out and zooming and moving. And it just gives you a lot of creative control. You might be looking at this footage and you're like, well, all that footage looks great, but it's kind of washed out looking. And the problem is I shot everything in D-Log-M. D-Log-M is less saturation, less contrast. It allows you to do color grading. It preserves your highlights so things aren't overexposing, preserves the darkest parts of your image so it doesn't go super black. But we shot in 10-bit. It allows us to do more color grading and edit. And you actually have color grading features right here in your toolbar. So we have video, image, audio, adjust, and speed. So when we go to adjust, this is all of our color. And this is going to be where you're going to adjust all of the color of your image. So you click color recovery and it's going to give you an instant look. And this is the recommended look. So this is just the D-Log-M recommended for the Osmo 360. And then from here, you can play around. You can add, maybe your highlights are not bright enough and you can bring those up. Or your shadows, you want to bring those up a little bit. But the darker, the black parts of your image, you want to bring those down. Maybe your luminance as a whole, you want to bring up. Maybe the color temperature's off, so you change it. You make it warmer, you make it cooler. And you could boost your saturation, make it super saturated or desaturate a little bit if you don't love that look. You do that with vibrance, you can add some sharpness, bring down your sharpness, bring up, and you can add a vignette if you want. And what's cool is if you want the same look applied to all the shots, you just click apply to all, and then it applies to all the clips. And then you go up to color recovery, hit that, apply to all. Now all of your clips have both the color recovery and all the basic corrections added to it, so you can have one look and just set it up and then do all the clips in your timeline. Makes it super easy when you're working with this footage in DJI Studio. Well, you might be asking, what are some of the other things that we have in this editing software? So right here on the main screen, if you aren't editing a 16:9 image, let's say you want to do vertical, well, you could switch it right here. So we could switch to a 9:16 and it automatically adjusts everything. So you can see all the shots have automatically adjusted for this 9:16. You can go through and tweak. You could do a 1:1, 4:3, 3:4, back to 16:9, and it saves all of your edits that you made on the timeline. So you can just switch between. So if you want to export both a vertical and a horizontal, you could easily do that in this software. At any point, you can take a snapshot by clicking the little camera icon. You could take an image of what you've edited, or you could do the full panoramic image of the 360. And if you want to watch this footage back in full screen, you click the full screen button and it will play back in full screen. Now let's go back up to our inspector here of what we have. So we have video, we went through all of that. We have image. This has some of our tools that are going to help with our image. So rock steady, you always want to keep that on. That's just going to make your footage stable. Stitching, this is when you add the transparent lenses. So if you have a protector on your lenses, you're going to want to click this on. Chromatic aberration control, this is to help with the lenses and make sure that the image looks right. You have stitching optimization, you have optical flow stitching, and you also have a high precision smart stitching. And when you click this on, it says optimize stitching seams through intelligent algorithm when enabled. Export time is longer. Stitching effect can only be viewed after export. So it's just a high precision. It takes some more time to go through the algorithm, and then it makes it even better. I rarely turn that on because the optical flow stitching seems to work just great. And then you have this dewarp option, and that's only when you're using specific field of view where you can dewarp the footage. So audio, it's pretty basic. You have volume, 0 to 100. Your adjust, that's all your color. If you want to add your Osmo 360 logo in the corner, you can do that. And you can change all the different positions. It can be in the bottom, it could be in the top right. And then we have speed. So we could change the speed of these clips. Let's find a long clip and let's change the speed. So we're going to add one more clip to this timeline, and I'm going to keyframe, and then let's adjust our speed. Let's go 5x. So now it's going to be sped up like a time lapse. So if you want to change the speed of your clips, you can easily do that here. You could also do slow. So let's say half speed. So if you are shooting higher frame rates, you can slow it down and actually make your slow motion, or you could speed up your footage and make it, a hyperlapse kind of a look. And this is for when you're not using the hyperlapse feature. So beyond just the footage that you're adding to your timeline, you can bring in music. So there's a bunch of different music options here that DJI provides you. You can also create filters over your entire footage. So let's say you want to add this Fast Pro filter look, and it's going to pop up under filter and adjust, and you'll see it here, and it shows your intensity. So this is like a LUT or a pre-created look for your footage, and you can bring it up or down, and you can also apply this to all like your other color presets, and you can also turn it on and off. Now you also have access to your dashboard feature. So if you are using the Bluetooth remote or you have third-party data, you could bring that into your software using a fit file. And then basically you could add a dashboard. So if you're on a bicycle, you can add your speed and all these different things. This might be cool if this is something that you want to have on the side. And you can see just here's a quick preview of what it could look like. It shows your path, it shows altitude, slope, distance, it shows your speed that you're currently going. Could be a fun thing to use, especially if you're doing action sports. Now, a couple other things down here on the timeline just for control purposes. You have your zoom, which zooms in and out of your timeline to make it smaller and bigger. You have this preview. So right now I have it enabled. So as I scrub around, you see the preview up on the screen. I can turn this off, and then as I scrub around, you don't see that preview. And then you also have snapping. So when this is disabled, the cursor kind of goes where you point it. Whereas when you have snapping enabled, the cursor will grab to the different ends. So the keyframes or the ends of the frame, and it'll be easier to pull the clips around. So I usually keep my snapping on. That's just, I'm used to it because that's what I use when I'm in Final Cut Pro as well. Now, the last thing that you need to do is export your footage. So you go up here, you click export, and this is going to export your full timeline, and it's going to pull out as a video. You can name it. You could add your storage location, resolution, frame rate, bit rate, noise reduction, export as 10-bit color. And then you have this option to either do video or panoramic video. If you do panoramic video, it's going to export the full 360 image. So if you want to work with the 360 image in another editing software, you can export it here. So you could do some things like color grading in DJI Studio, get it out of the log, and then pull it into another software if that's what you want to do. Or you do all your edits in here, export that as a video, and then bring that into another editing software, or upload it directly to social media or wherever you're posting your video. So overall, it's a fairly straightforward piece of software. You just got to do your edits, do your keyframes, do your tracking, and you just work in this timeline view. So you pull individual clips, work on one clip at a time, or you work as multiple clips, do a full timeline, and export that all together. Overall, working with a 360 camera gives you a lot of flexibility when you're out crafting your videos. And for me, a 360 camera is that tool that I want to use where I don't have to think about my shot. Now, obviously, we want to think about positioning, where the camera is, how you're moving it, but you really don't have to think about your framing. If I'm out climbing a mountain, I don't want to think about where I'm pointing the camera because I'm hiking along, a glacier, and there could be a huge crevasse. And when I use an action camera, you're only pointed at one direction and you could completely miss the shot. Whereas bringing a 360 camera allows you to reframe later, get the shot, not really have to worry about where you're pointed. And the DJI Osmo 360 really opens up a ton of flexibility to have a more professional level tool with that D-Log M and have an awesome 1-inch sensor on both sides for low light, better resolution. Like, this camera just has a ton of potential to be used in so many different settings. So if you've got all the way to the end of this video, write 360 is awesome down below in the comments. And if you haven't actually purchased your DJI Osmo 360, I'll put some links in the description that show you a few different places of where you can buy your camera right now. And next, I highly suggest you check out this video right here, which I used a bunch of 360 footage when I was out filming. This is a mountain climb, so you can get some examples of how to actually use 360 in more of a story-driven piece. And so I'll see you on the next one.